convicted, homicide, arson, weapon offense.
Convicted. So what we talking about? Convict some of these perpetrators that rape these women that are...
At exactly 3:47 a.m. on a humid Tuesday morning in March, agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Immigration and Customs Enforcement stood in formation outside 14 luxury properties scattered across Miami Beach, Coral Gables, and Brickell. What they were about to uncover would become the single largest cash seizure in the history of federal cartel enforcement operations on American soil. $380 million in pure cartel currency. Not drugs, not assets, cash. Stacked floor to ceiling in penthouses and mansions owned by people who smiled at charity galas and cut ribbons at new condominium towers. This is the story of how the Sinaloa Cartel turned Miami's wealthiest zip codes into the cleanest, quietest, and most profitable money laundering machine the United States has ever seen. And the man who made it possible was not a gangster. He was a businessman, a developer, a man whose face appeared on the covers of luxury lifestyle magazines. His name was Victor Castellano, and for 6 years he built an empire with one foundation: cartel cash and silence. The air that night felt thick, the kind of Miami humidity that clings to your skin and makes everything feel slower, heavier. But the agents were anything but slow. 14 strike teams, over 230 federal officers, FBI, ICE, DEA liaison units, Homeland Security Investigations Financial Crimes Division, SWAT units in black tactical gear rolling through streets where Lamborghinis and Bentleys sat parked under palm trees and soft yellow streetlights. These were neighborhoods where security cameras watched every corner, where private gates required codes, where nobody asked questions because everyone had something to hide. But tonight, the questions were coming whether they liked it or not. At 3:47 a.m., the first breach happened simultaneously across all 14 locations. Flashbangs cracked through the pre-dawn darkness like thunder trapped in tight hallways. Reinforced doors built to withstand hurricanes shattered under hydraulic battering rams. Agents poured into marble foyers and open-concept living rooms with vaulted ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Biscayne Bay. They moved fast, weapons raised, voices sharp and commanding. Hands up, get on the ground, do not move. In a penthouse on Collins Avenue, agents found a man in silk pajamas trying to shove bundles of $100 bills into a duffel bag. In a Coral Gables estate with fountains in the front yard, a woman was halfway out a back window when a SWAT officer grabbed her ankle and pulled her back inside. But it was what the agents found in the back rooms, the walk-in closets, the hidden safes behind fake electrical panels, and the custom-built vaults under marble floors that made every single officer stop and stare. Cash. Endless. Cash. Bricks of $100 bills wrapped in plastic and stacked like construction materials. In one penthouse alone, agents found over $42 million packed into Louis Vuitton luggage, cardboard boxes, and industrial plastic bins. In another property, $28 million was hidden inside a false wall behind a home theater system. In a Brickell high-rise, $16 million sat inside a climate-controlled wine cellar where the bottles had been removed and replaced with vacuum-sealed currency bundles. The bills smelled clean, chemically treated. Some still had bank wrappers on them. This was not street money. This was processed, cleaned, organized, professional. By the time the sun started to break over the Atlantic Ocean, federal agents had seized $380 million in cash from 14 properties across South Florida. It was the largest single-day cartel cash confiscation in United States history, and it was only the beginning. Inside the seized penthouses, agents also found something else: laptops, tablets, encrypted hard drives, external servers locked inside fireproof cases, ledgers written in coded shorthand, USB drives taped under desks and inside air vents. An FBI cyber forensics team was called in immediately. They set up a mobile command station inside a seized Brickell condo and began cracking passwords, bypassing encryption layers, and pulling apart digital trails that had been designed to disappear. What they discovered in those first 12 hours would redefine everything federal investigators thought they knew about how the Sinaloa Cartel moved money through the United States. The operation had a name. It was buried deep inside an encrypted folder on a server that had been wiped and rewritten 6 times. The folder was labeled Cadena Dorada, the golden chain. And inside that folder was a blueprint, a complete financial architecture that stretched from cartel safehouses in Culiacan all the way to penthouse suites in downtown Miami. The money flow was surgical. But cartel operatives in Mexico would bundle cash proceeds from cocaine, fentanyl, methamphetamine, and heroin distribution networks operating across the southern and eastern United States. That cash would be transported in commercial trucks, hidden inside shipments of produce, furniture, and auto parts, then delivered to collection hubs in Texas and Arizona. From there, the money was broken into smaller sums and funneled through a network of shell companies, all registered under different names, all linked to one man, Victor Castellano. Victor Castellano was 53 years old, Cuban-American, second-generation immigrant, self-made developer who built his first property in his 20s and never stopped climbing. He owned Castellano Properties Group, a luxury real estate development firm that had erected some of the most expensive residential towers in Miami over the last decade. He was charming, photogenic, donated to children's hospitals, spoke at economic development panels, threw fundraisers for local politicians. He lived in a waterfront mansion in Key Biscayne worth $18 million. His wife was on the board of 3 nonprofit foundations. His children went to private academies where tuition cost more than most people's annual salary. And beneath all of that, he was the primary financial architect for the Sinaloa Cartel's American money laundering network. The files showed it all. Castellano had created over 60 shell companies and fake limited liability corporations designed to absorb cartel cash and convert it into real estate purchases, renovation contracts, oppi and property flips. The money would come in as investor capital or private loans with no names attached. Castellano would use it to buy luxury condos, beachfront estates, and commercial properties. He would renovate them using cartel-funded construction crews. Then he would sell them at market value or higher, and the proceeds would come out clean. Legal, taxable, untraceable. He took a percentage. The cartel got back 85 cents on every dollar, fully laundered and ready to move through the legitimate financial system. It was brilliant. It was quiet. And it had been running without a single federal flag for over 6 years. But the forensic team found more than just money trails. They found communications, encrypted messages sent through apps designed to delete after reading, but nothing ever really disappears. Castellano had been in direct contact with a cartel lieutenant operating out of Sinaloa. The messages were brief but clear. Confirmations of incoming shipments, updates on property closings, instructions on which accounts to move funds into and when. One message, dated 14 months earlier, simply read, 3.2 arriving Thursday, spread across Brickell and Gables. No single property over 20. Translation, $3.2 million in cash arriving Thursday, distributed across properties in Brickell and Coral Gables. No single location should hold more than 20 million to avoid detection patterns. This was not the work of a corrupt middleman. This was command-level coordination. Castellano was not laundering money for the cartel. He was operating as part of the cartel. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit pulled every transaction tied to Castellano Properties Group going back 8 years. What they found was staggering. Over $900 million had moved through his network of companies in that time. Not all of it was cartel money, but the patterns were unmistakable. Large cash infusions followed by rapid property acquisitions, renovations completed in record time using contractors who were paid in cash and had no previous work history, properties sold to offshore buyers whose identities were hidden behind layers of international trusts, and holding companies registered in Panama, the Cayman Islands, and the British Virgin Islands. The entire operation was designed to look legitimate from the outside, while functioning as a high-volume cartel cash-cleaning service on the inside. And it had worked flawlessly until one single informant, a low-level contractor who had been arrested on an unrelated drug charge, mentioned in an interrogation that he had been paid $20,000 in cash to install marble countertops in a penthouse and told not to ask questions. That single statement 6 months earlier had triggered the investigation that led to this moment. At 6:15 a.m., inside a secure federal building in downtown Miami, a joint task force command center came online. The room was filled with agents from the FBI, ICE, DEA, Homeland Security Investigations, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida. A massive digital map covered the wall, showing real-time locations of every property, business, and individual connected to Victor Castellano and the Sinaloa Cartel's financial network. There were over 40 red markers pulsing across Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. Each one represented a target, a property, a business front, a cartel associate, a corrupt enabler. The task force commander, a senior FBI special agent named Catherine Ruiz, stood in front of the map and addressed the room. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of someone who had spent 20 years chasing cartels and knew exactly what they were capable of. "This is not a raid," she said. "This is an eradication. We are dismantling an entire financial ecosystem that has allowed the Sinaloa Cartel to operate with impunity in South Florida for over half a decade. We have warrants for 32 individuals. We have seizure orders for 67 properties. We have asset freeze orders on 40 shell companies and 86 bank accounts. And we have one primary target, Victor Castellano. He is currently at his residence in Key Biscayne. We move in 30 minutes. At 6:47 a.m., the operation launched. Over 400 federal agents deployed across South Florida in the largest coordinated cartel enforcement action the region had ever seen. SWAT teams moved on luxury estates in Pinecrest and Coconut Grove. ICE agents raided commercial properties in Doral and Hialeah that had been used as cash drop points. DEA units hit a cartel safe house in Homestead, where over $12 million in cash had been stored in false ceiling compartments. FBI agents stormed the offices of Castellano Properties Group in Brickell, seizing servers, files, and hard drives while employees stood frozen at their desks. And in Key Biscayne, a tactical unit surrounded Victor Castellano's waterfront mansion, cutting off every exit, every dock, every possible escape route. Castellano was in his kitchen drinking espresso when agents breached his front door. He did not run. He did not resist. He simply set the cup down on the marble counter, raised his hands, and smiled. That smile stayed on his face even as agents cuffed him and read him his rights, even as they walked him out of his home in front of his wife and children, even as they loaded him into an unmarked vehicle and drove him to a federal holding facility where he would be processed and charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering, racketeering, and material support to a foreign drug trafficking organization. That smile said everything. It said he believed he would walk. It said he had lawyers. It said he had connections. It said he thought the system would protect him because it always had. But the system was not protecting anyone anymore. By noon, agents had executed every warrant on the list. 32 individuals were in federal custody. 67 properties had been seized under asset forfeiture laws. 86 bank accounts containing over $94 million had been frozen. In addition to the $380 million in cash confiscated during the initial raids, agents had now seized luxury vehicles, yachts, jewelry, art collections, and offshore investment portfolios tied to the laundering network. The total value of assets taken in a single day exceeded $600 million. It was the most devastating blow the Sinaloa Cartel had suffered on American soil in over a decade. But the deeper investigators dug, the darker the picture became. The forensic team examining the seized servers uncovered internal communications that revealed just how deeply the cartel had embedded itself into South Florida's infrastructure. Castellano had not been working alone. He had cultivated relationships with bankers, accountants, real estate attorneys, notaries, and property appraisers, who all played roles in making the laundering operation seamless. Some of them knew exactly what they were doing. Others had been paid to look the other way and not ask questions. Bank officers at mid-tier regional institutions had accepted large cash deposits without filing required suspicious activity reports. Accountants had created false income statements to justify property purchases. Real estate attorneys had processed deals with offshore buyers and never questioned the source of funds. It was a coordinated network of complicity where silence was bought and sold like any other commodity. One particularly disturbing file showed how Castellano had used charitable foundations as additional laundering vehicles. He had set up nonprofit organizations focused on affordable housing development and disaster relief. Cartel money would be donated to these foundations under the names of anonymous benefactors. The foundations would then use that money to fund construction projects managed by Castellano's companies. The projects would inflate costs, pay subcontractors in cash, and cycle the money back through the system as clean income. It was a perfect loop. And it allowed Castellano to appear as a philanthropist while running one of the most efficient cartel cash pipelines in the country. Federal investigators also discovered that Castellano had leveraged his relationships with local politicians and government officials to smooth the way for his operations. He had donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to political campaigns. He had hosted fundraising events at his properties. He had wined and dined city commissioners, zoning board members, and county administrators. In return, his development projects received expedited permits, favorable zoning variances, and tax incentives that saved his companies millions. There was no evidence that these officials knew they were indirectly enabling cartel money laundering. But their willingness to accept his money and his influence created an environment where his operations could thrive without scrutiny. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit estimated that the Sinaloa Cartel had moved over $2 billion through Castellano's network since its inception. $2 billion. That money had come from the sale of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and fentanyl distributed across American cities and towns. It had come from addiction, from overdoses, from shattered families and destroyed communities. And it had been washed clean in Miami penthouses and luxury condos while the people who lived in those buildings sipped champagne and watched the sunset over the bay. On the third day after the raids, Federal prosecutors unsealed a sweeping indictment that named Victor Castellano and 47 co-conspirators in a racketeering case that detailed the entire scope of the laundering operation. The indictment was over 200 pages long. It laid out every transaction, every shell company, every fake loan, every cartel communication, and every corrupt relationship that had allowed the network to function. The evidence was overwhelming. Phone records, financial documents, encrypted messages, testimony from cooperating witnesses, forensic analysis of cash bundles that matched chemical markers found in cartel drug labs in Mexico. This was not a case built on suspicion. It was a case built on facts. Castellano's lawyers immediately went to work. They held press conferences. They claimed their client was a legitimate businessman being targeted by overzealous federal agents. They said the cash found in the properties could have come from anywhere, and that there was no direct evidence linking Castellano to cartel operations. But the prosecutors had more than direct evidence. They had Castellano's own words. Encrypted messages recovered from his devices showed him discussing shipment timing, distribution strategies, and cartel leadership by name. In one message, he referred to a cartel lieutenant as our partner in the South and confirmed receipt of the last package with instructions to keep everything below the waterline. In another, he discussed the need to diversify the cleaning routes because the feds are watching Texas harder now. These were not the words of an innocent businessman. They were the words of a man who knew exactly what he was doing and who he was doing it for. As the case moved forward, federal agents also began investigating other real estate developers and financial professionals in South Florida who may have been running similar operations. The Castellano network had been the largest and most sophisticated, but it was not the only one. Cartel money had been flowing into Miami real estate for years, hidden behind layers of shell companies and offshore buyers. The U.S. Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network estimated that billions of dollars in illicit funds had been laundered through American real estate markets over the past decade, and South Florida was one of the primary entry points. The Castellano case was a warning. It was proof that luxury real estate was not just a market. It was a weapon. And the cartels had learned how to use it. In the weeks following the raids, community leaders and law enforcement officials held public forums to discuss what had happened and what it meant for Miami. Residents were shocked. Many had lived in buildings developed by Castellano. They had walked past his billboards. They had read about his charitable work. They had no idea that the man behind those glossy ads was quietly moving hundreds of millions of dollars for one of the most violent drug cartels in the world. The revelation shattered the illusion that wealth and respectability were inherently legitimate. It showed that power and corruption could wear expensive suits and smile for cameras. It showed that the cartel war was not just happening at the border. It was happening in boardrooms and penthouse suites. The human cost of this operation was incalculable. The money that Castellano laundered came from drugs that killed people, fentanyl that stopped hearts, heroin that destroyed lives, methamphetamine that tore apart families, cocaine that fueled addiction and violence. Every dollar he cleaned represented suffering somewhere in America. A mother who lost her son to an overdose, a child growing up without a father, a neighborhood consumed by gang violence funded by cartel distribution networks. Castellano had insulated himself from that reality. He lived in a world of marble countertops and ocean views, but his wealth was built on a foundation of death, and now, finally, he would be held accountable. Victor Castellano's trial is scheduled for later this year. If convicted on all charges, he faces up to life in federal prison. His co-conspirators are facing similar sentences. The properties seized in the raids are being liquidated, and the proceeds will go toward funding law enforcement operations and victim support programs. The $380 million in cash confiscated during the operation has been cataloged, processed, and will be used to support continued efforts to dismantle cartel networks operating in the United States. The Sinaloa Cartel will not disappear because of this case. They are too large, too adaptable, too deeply embedded in the global drug trade, but they have lost a critical financial artery. And they have learned that American cities are not safe havens, that luxury real estate is not untouchable, that silence and money cannot always buy protection. This story is a reminder that corruption does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it walks in quietly, wearing a tailored suit and carrying a briefcase. It donates to charities. It shakes hands with mayors and commissioners. It builds skyscrapers with someone else's blood money and calls it progress. The Castellano network was not an anomaly. It was a symptom of a much larger problem. As long as there is demand for drugs, there will be cartels. As long as there are cartels, there will be money. And as long as there is money, there will be people willing to clean it, no matter the cost. If you are still watching this, tap like so more people see what is really happening behind closed doors in our wealthiest cities. And comment expose if you believe every dollar tied to cartel operations should be seized and every enabler should face justice. Share this story if you think the public deserves to know how deep the infiltration goes. This is not just about Miami. This is about every city where luxury and corruption meet in the shadows. And this is a warning. The system can be bought, but it can also be taken back.